Do you want like the big intro, or are you just happy saying, "Hey, everybody, it's Jimmy Jacobs"?
Either one works.
Okay. Well, I think we just did
I
it
like that one.
then. Well, thank you for being here, man. Appreciate it. You're about to hit the road with Canada's Wrestling Elite, a bunch of shows coming up across central Canada, starting Friday, May the 5th, going through May the 14th. How did you get talked into this stretch of the flattest part of the country during one of the warmest times of the season?
Talked into it. I begged to be on it. I was talking to Danny, and he mentioned we were talking about different people he was bringing in, and he mentioned he had Tessa coming up for a 10-day tour. And I'm good friends with Tessa Blanchard, and I was like, "Oh, you got a 10-day tour coming up?" Because he hadn't been running these longer tours in the past 3 years now. And the last
Yeah.
one we did was fall of 2019. Was up there with him for like 30 days. I was supposed to go in the spring of 2023, but as you know, the government shut everything down right around that time. So when I heard he had a 10-day tour, he's like, "Man, I'm all booked up." I was like, "I don't care, dude. This is like my vacation. This is my getaway from my life. I love doing these tours, so I'm super excited about it."
So, for those that aren't familiar with you offhand, because we talk a lot about WWE, AEW, all these things, you've been everywhere, and you're one of these guys who is probably more known to people behind the scenes, sometimes even than fans. And that's not a disrespect to your career at all. What I'm saying is just you've had a lot of work behind the scenes with companies that has helped you propel other acts as well as manage your own career here. So, Ring of Honor, obviously, massive impact there. Impact Now, of course. And then in between, there was even stints writing for WWE. There was a famous selfie that maybe resulted in that. We're not going to talk about that sort of stuff, but just your experience as a creative mind in wrestling, I think, is what more people that focus on the behind the scenes stuff know you for. Would that be safe to say?
Sure. I mean, look, 15 years ago, I had more fans than I do now because that's when I was doing the stuff probably at the height of my career. Probably like most I was certainly ever featured as a top act was in 2007, 2008 in the Ring of Honor days. Just sort of at the end of some of those glory years. I brought it all down. They put me on top. And I was like, gotta fire the booker. But yeah. So look, yeah, I've had an extensive in-ring career, on the independents, 10 years in Ring of Honor. And I do love performing, but, 8 years ago, I transitioned to, instead of being in front of the camera, mostly being behind the camera. I mean, all being behind the camera for the 2.5 years I was on the creative team for WWE from April of 2015 to October of 2017. And since then, I still do shows. I still put on my tights and play when, people want me to come down and play or when I so feel inclined. But the majority of the past 5.5 years, I've been working for Impact Wrestling behind the scenes. But I always had a certain aptitude for the storytelling and creative component of wrestling, the psychology of wrestling. It was innate with me, and I don't mean to put myself over. I'll point out plenty of the stuff I'm bad at. Don't get me wrong, but this is something I had an aptitude for when I was 15. Like as soon as I got in, there are certain things that no one ever had to tell me. I just understood. I understood why something worked and why something didn't work, and so I used that to my advantage throughout my career because I wasn't like, look, here I'll bury myself. I wasn't the best wrestler. I mean, compared to a lot of the performers and their athletic ability and their you know physical creativity in the ring. Even 15 years ago, I had a hard time keeping up with the Alex Shelley's and the Matt Sedells of the world, and so many incredible athletic performers, the Brian Danielsons and people like that. And nowadays, I mean, it's even you know when I left WWE in 2017, I went on the Indies. I was shocked by how incredibly athletic the wrestlers were, and so that was just never my exact thing. I was a storyteller. I
Yeah.
was the guy in Ring of Honor. Basically, once CM Punk left, he was doing like these emotional stories with guys like Raven and Jimmy Rave. And once he left, I sort of I'm not comparing myself to CM Punk, but I took over the reign of being the guy in Ring of Honor who was telling, these long-term, a little more intricate stories. And I found my niche doing that. And that brought me to a nice career of working behind the scenes.
Well, and that's the thing about it, is that the thing people complain about sometimes these days, especially us older fans, we'll get on the bandwagon of, oh, where's the story? Where, nothing just happens out of nowhere. Knowing some of the things you've been involved in and things you've talked about in other interviews, how easy was it, I guess, to introduce that to places where maybe they weren't used to doing such long-term stuff anymore, or going in depth on things anymore? It's more like, oh, we don't need to have a reason for this match. We'll just have a match.
Yeah, well, look, on the independents, it can be difficult, right? When you're running like once a month, like how deep into the storytelling can you get? And especially, you don't want like 10 things, 10 different stories going on at once for fans that are kind of coming in and coming out. But with Ring of Honor, especially in 2005, 2006, 2007, in those days, we had a pretty rabid fan base, a pretty loyal fan base that watched the product religiously, and it was an opportunity to, tell stories to an audience that wanted to pay attention to what was going on. And at the same time, what was really cool about that time, that 2004 to 2008 Ring of Honor stuff, was we really had no masters at that point, right? This is before, pay-per-views and TVs and sponsors and all these masters you have to start to answer to when you start working in the television business.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of creative freedom at that point to just do the most creative stuff we want to do. And I was fortunate to have that platform. So it's a mix, right? In Ring of Honor, it was mostly guys that were just very athletic. That was kind of the brand. It's like, this is the sports alternative to professional wrestling. And I just was like one of the only guys that was kind of allowed to have that niche in there. We're going, okay, in this sports wrestling show, here's the weirdo entertainer in the midst of it. So that's how it worked at Ring of Honor. And again, on indies, it varies. I always enjoyed trying to tell stories as best as I could. Sort of despite that. And some of my most favorite stuff I've ever done is like, it's like super like weird, obscure, small indies. Like I did
give me your best one-off here on this. Tell me a great one-off that you pulled off.
I mean, one of the things that comes to mind is I was working for Dan Severin's company in Coldwater, Michigan, back in like 2006. And I did an angle with Dan Severin where I beat him for the ultimate UFC championship one night. And but I did all sorts of stuff like that. It was, I look back at that time in like my early and mid 20s, like you didn't know where you would catch Jimmy Jacobs, but wherever he was, like there was some weird story going on with him, no matter what like company you kind of saw him in. So,
okay. I have to ask this then, out of doing all the weird things, was there ever one that really backfired on you and you ended up paying for it one way or another?
Not really. I don't think so. I mean, nothing off the top of my head. I'm sure if I sat down long enough. Look, I've done some bad angles before. I've pitched even worse angles.
We'll get there, but I'm just wondering, maybe if you ever, maybe something popped in your head. I'll give you an example here. So it was a show that I was ring announcing, and we had brought in a name. I'm not going to say who it was, but the guy on our roster played kind of a pervy, sleazy character to begin with. And in the middle of the match, he licked the visiting name right on the face. And it was one of those moments where you're like, he's either going to let it slide or kill our little indie star here. And luckily the guy let it slide, but that's kind of, maybe sometimes something pops in your head, but I'm glad to hear actually that nothing like that happened to you.
I've been mostly lucky, but look, man, no matter where you go and what you do, every time you perform, it's an opportunity to go out there and do something, right? When you go out there and just do what you've always done, you're always going to get the same results, right? Input in, input out. If you put the same input in, you get the same output. So for me, it was always about like playing and testing out new things and just going, what can we do that will be fun and exciting and engaging with this, with this opportunity we have. Even if it's in front of 30 people, it's like, who cares? Let's play.
Talking about some of the storylines here, probably the one that everybody knows and you're probably tired of talking about is the List of Jericho. But at the same time, that is really just one of those ideas, it seems like, that just sounds crazy enough to work. Was there any build up to that at all, or was it just kind of popping in your head like, hey, what if we just came up with this?
Yeah, so we had a bit on Raw. We were in Memphis, and Jericho was going to come out and like air his grievances against Mick Foley.
Right.
And so I thought, well, he should have a list of grievances, like a physical list. This is the, just he's going to air grievances. You go, well, he should have like a physical list, just to, uh, you know, here's a list, number one. And then I thought about in real life, Steve Carino has like the Carino list, right? The people who in his life, in his career, they make his like his list, and they're like dead to him.
Hmm.
And so I thought, what if Jericho has the same sort of thing, except he's super petty and just like puts all sorts of people on it for all different reasons. And once I sort of came up with that, like I knew it was a good idea because I started having more ideas on top of it. It's like, oh, and he can do this, and he can do this. And like, that's when you know you have a good idea. Like when you're in a creative room, when someone pitches something and a bunch of people start piling on and go, oh, this and this and this and this, like, you have something with some meat and some legs. And so I came up with what I thought, this is going to be good. And I pitched it to Chris. We were at Raw, and I pitched to him, and he went to me, so you're talking about doing this more than just tonight? I'm like, yeah, dude, like this can be your thing. It's like you've been doing the gift of Jericho, drinking it, man. This is gonna be like the List of Jericho. And he got it right away, and he added on to it. He added the, having the big clipboard, and he added, of course, the way it was delivered with a click of the pen and all that sort of stuff. And so he really brought it to life. But it was a really fun time. Getting a thing that like just like hit the bullseye. And for a while that was the most, that would get the biggest reactions at Raw when Chris Jericho puts your name on the list. That was like, that's what you build to.
I think when you see your idea translated into merchandise, I remember they were selling List of Jericho clipboards. That's got to be something that feels pretty good. It's like, that's how well this idea paid off.
Yeah, for me, it was when Chris had to turn babyface, because he had to turn babyface, and then they would end the house shows with him putting the city on the list. Like that, to me, that was like, yes, we've made it, because you always send the people home with the biggest pop,
right?
And so it's like, you can't, it's not enough to get a 1, 2, 3. It's like after the match, you got to cut the promo. You know what happens, Phoenix? You know what happens when you're a great crowd? You just made the list. Yay. To me, that was like a big deal for me.
I do want to ask you about this tour coming up here, 10 days on the road with Canada's Wrestling Elite. Tessa Blanchard going to be on the card, just like you said. The great thing about these tours that Danny does as well, I was talking to him last night about it. I was like, because we're going to have him on the show finally to talk about this concept, because really he's the only guy up here I know of that does these stretches for as far and wide as he does. I'm sure there's several indie promotions down in the States because the population is a lot denser.
No, nobody does this, and nobody does it. No. And in the United States, nobody does 10-day tours or 15-day tours or 30-day tours. Nobody does. I would be honest. I love it. I love this stuff. I love just putting on tights every day in wrestling. It's my favorite. Drive to a town, drive a few hours, a handful of hours, 2 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, put on tights, wrestle. I love it. This is what I live for.
I was going to ask you, is that what you pictured as a kid, a wrestling career being, where you'd just be doing town to town to town to town to town? Or did you think it was like a once a week thing? You just show up somewhere, and what did you imagine yourself doing? It sounds like this is kind of where you wanted to be.
I had no idea. Like I look back at me when I started when I was 15. I was really young, and even the first couple of years, there was nothing. There was no like goal in a certain way for the first couple of years. It wasn't until a few years later, in my early 20s, I was like, oh, I could whatever, maybe I'll go to WB in a few years, which never really panned out. But when I first started, it was just to do it. It was like, just let me be a wrestler. Let me perform. Let me do this thing I love. And that was it. And my whole career was just doing the next show. And if someone was like, hey, you want to do a show? Going, yes, I do. Let's make this happen. And then just the desire to go out there and do it. And that's part of what I love about working for Danny so much. It's just, let's just go out there and do it. There's, again, when you get into the TV business and the TV wrestling business, it's a different beast. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying nobody who wrestles for WWE enjoys it or AEW or Impact. I'm not saying that, but I love the house show wrestling. It's like the only reason you would want to be a WWE wrestler is just for the, 3 days before TV where you get to do what you enjoy. The TV is like you're selling something, you're working on these like really confined, these restrictions. You got to get this one thing over in this amount of time. And it's a very specific thing. It's like, it's TV wrestling. It's something very specific. But just going out there and doing what you like doing. I mean, that's why I do it.
I got to say, I'm finding this conversation pretty inspiring. I like your energy. I like your approach to this. There's a lot of people that are negative in all forms of entertainment and even broadcasting, but it's an attitude like yours. I feel that if you just kind of roll with the punches and what comes next, you're never really setting yourself up too much, but also you're not disappointing yourself too much. You're kind of giving yourself an even flow to kind of look forward to what's happening next. What keeps you positive? What keeps you so feeling good, I guess?
Yeah, and that's just what works. That's just what works for me. And look, I wasn't always super positive about different things. I remember when it was like cool to like not like what you do and be like, oh, we're gonna do this again. And look, that's part of the cycle. Part of the cycle is hating it, right? It's like you don't really love something until you actually hate it, and you still love it, which is a weird thing to say, but for me now at this point in my life, especially. I always remind myself, like, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything. All of this is just your choice. At any point, you can opt out and make a different choice. So there's nothing tying me here. There's nothing binding me to this or to my other job or to anything I do in life. The house I just bought, whatever I'm doing, at any point I can go, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to do something else. And if I don't want to do something else and I want to do this, then there are certain things that come along with it. If you go, oh, this part of it sucks, this part of it sucks, this part of it sucks, you go, okay. But that comes along with it. So you can choose to do it with the parts that you don't like, or you can choose to do something else. And so there's always a freedom for me, there's always a freedom in reminding myself that I'm making the choices in my life, always, and nothing is keeping me anywhere other than my own choice.
You can be beholden to someone else's wishes, but it's your choice to be beholden to it. Does that make sense?
Always, like you can't outsource free will. That's the thing about life. As much as you might want to, you might want someone else to make decisions for you. You might want to blame somebody else for what's going on in your life. And look, I'm not saying people don't get victimized, because of course that happens. But for the most part, what we're doing are making choices, even if when we're unhappy about it, we're making unhealthy choices, and we're choosing to make unhealthy choices because we feel more comfortable in our own misery than the unknown of doing something else, of letting go and going, all right, what's going to happen? I don't know. And we've all been in those situations. I mean, that's sort of part of the human nature. It seems to be, is we're risk averse. And so we go, well, I'd rather do this thing and be content in my misery than let go of this and see what happens if I take this leap somewhere else. Because oh my God, the catastrophe that could happen if I walk into the unknown and things don't go my way. But it's like, look, man, life is a constant process of walking into the next unknown moment. And as much as we can try to hold on to what we know and what we go, okay, well, at least I can have this, I can hold on to this, eventually that'll be gone too. Mm-hmm. So you can choose to either walk and change with the flow of reality, or you can go kicking and screaming. And some people choose to go kicking and screaming, and that's okay. But it's not like it's not going to be beneficial to you. It's not going to be pleasant for you. How about that?
It's easy to hang on to insecurity because insecurity can be constant. I guess we're going a lot more philosophical than I thought we would, but I appreciate you being open to this discussion, because I think this is something that a lot of people, especially post-pandemic, it feels like everybody's kind of worried about what everybody else is going to do, and nobody wants to just open up to each other and be like, hey, you know what? I'm okay if you go do something else, or if I feel like I'm going to go do something else, that's okay too. And I love the way you just said that. It's like you can either choose to roll with the punches, or you can choose to let it tear you down. And it seems like you're a guy that has had a remarkable amount of success and continued success, just doing what you do, man. So good on you.
Yeah, man. I just read Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, and it's not a particularly easy read. But certainly, at least the Stoic philosophy, I mean, just nonstop, he's just talking about, look, everything changes all the time. That's all that happens, is everything changes, and that's not bad, because that's the nature of everything, and death's going to happen. So you're going to die, and that can't be bad, because that's just the process of things. As things come and things go and things die, and just be okay with it. Or, the true duty in life is just to, like, why would you be moved by something that's happening that's of course going to happen? Not that I'm particularly a Stoic, but
no, but there is some credence to Stoicism and just that. I mean, I'd never actually heard of that philosophy until a couple of weeks ago. I saw it on a talk show of all places, and yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it actually that's kind of what I've been reinforcing in my life. And for people that are listening, maybe, or watching, that are maybe a little confused, why am I letting so many things get to me? Why am I feeling worried all the time, or stuff like that? This sort of thing can help, I think, and this sort of thought can help. So to see someone like you,
for sure.
Obviously, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Look, at the end of it, to me, once the more responsibility you can take for your experience, the better. Mm-hmm. I mean, for real. Or I can look at my life and go, somehow I am co-creating my experience right now, the better. The more I can take ownership of my internal experience, my emotions, and realize that those don't come from anywhere other than they're internally blossom. So once you sort of realize, like, so much of your experience is predicated on you, not the things around you. There's a liberation in that. There's also more responsibility in that, to go, oh, I'm the cause of my problem, actually, because it's my perception of things, the story I'm telling myself about my life, that's causing me this suffering. It's not inherent to the external the external stimulus that I'm receiving. If someone says, "Hey, screw you, buddy," to me, I have a choice. I have a choice of how to react to that. Yeah. I don't need to punch a man because he says "screw you." I can just laugh. I can walk away. I have a million different options. And when you start to see that all around you with reality, oh, my boss was mean to me. My boyfriend said this to me. My girlfriend did this to me. They're the bad guy. It's like, it's just you. It's just you experiencing the world. And you have so much control over your experience if you begin to accept that responsibility. And again, it's liberating, but it's also going, all right, it's me. Here I go.
CWE Canada is where you can find Jimmy Jacobs, cwecanada.ca. Watch him wrestle and stick around for the TED Talk afterwards, because it'll be no, man, this has been really great. Thanks for giving us a little opportunity to get to know you, and I hope you have a blast on this tour, man. It sounds like you're looking forward to it so much.
I am, man. I'm looking forward to to wrestling, and I'm sure on the car rides from town to town, I'll be spouting off different philosophies and ontological points of view on different things and whatever.
I think I might be coming out to one or two of these shows. Actually, I got some friends that are going to be there, so maybe look forward to shaking your hand. But nevertheless, last cliche question, and I haven't dug into this, so it's a dumb question, but I like to have the really softball wrestler question here. The name that shows up on your Zoom screen here is not Jimmy Jacobs. Why Jimmy Jacobs?
Um, I started off as a referee.
Okay.
When I was 15, I just started off as a referee, and I thought Jimmy Jacobs was like a bad referee name. And I was like, I'll be referee Jimmy Jacobs. And then here I am, like freaking 24 years later. It's like, hey, Jimmy. And I'm like, what's up, man? So
I didn't even know how to address you in the email. So either way, Jimmy Jacobs, CWECanada.ca. If you want to get tickets for any of these shows in the second week of May and beyond, Stall starts this Friday, May the 5th, and goes through Manitoba, Saskatchewan, all over CWECanada.ca. Thank you very much, whoever you are.
or any of us.
That's the next TED Talk.